The acid rain sizzled against Valix's exoskeleton as she dragged herself across the barren landscape. Each movement sent waves of pain through her body, the result of the human's unexpected counterattack. She had never failed before, had never even considered the possibility. The Sovereign had engineered her genetic line for perfection, optimized for the singular purpose of eradicating the human infestation. Yet here she was, wounded and alone on this desolate moon. Her squadron had retreated according to protocol when the ambush went sideways. No retrieval for compromised units. The mission superseded individual survival. This was the first law of her kind. Blood the color of cobalt leaked from the tear in her side where the human's experimental weapon had caught her. The projectile had somehow penetrated her reinforced dermal layer, a technological advancement her intelligence reports hadn't accounted for. A miscalculation that would cost her life. As consciousness began to fade, Valix's 4 eyes detected movement. A figure approached through the toxic mist, humanoid, protected by an environmental suit. She reached for her sidearm, finding only an empty holster. Defenseless. Unacceptable. She attempted to activate her neural toxin release, a last resort mechanism designed to prevent capture, but her internal systems failed to respond. "Don't move," the human said, voice distorted through his breathing apparatus. "You'll make the bleeding worse." Valix hissed, baring the serrated ridges that lined her jaw. "Finish it, human. I would not hesitate were our positions reversed." The human tilted his head, studying her through his visor. "I'm not in the habit of executing wounded combatants." He crouched beside her, medical scanner in hand. "I'm Nathan Reed. I run the research station on the North Ridge. Not military." "All humans are military targets," Valix recited automatically, though her voice lacked conviction as darkness crept into the edges of her vision. "That philosophy hasn't brought your people victory in this war, has it?" Nathan replied, checking the readings on his scanner. "You have internal damage. Won't survive the night in these conditions." Valix turned her face away. "Then leave me. Death is preferable to capture." "Death is preferable to nothing," he countered, preparing a stabilizing field generator. "You're the first Krexer I've seen up close. Your physiology is remarkable." "I am not Krexer," she managed, surprised by his error. "I am Valkyrie. Elite caste." "Interesting." The human activated the field, enveloping her in a shimmer of blue energy that immediately dulled the pain. "The Valkyrie are just propaganda as far as Earth intelligence is concerned. Living weapons created to hunt humans. Not propaganda." Valix's vision blurred as the stabilizer administered sedatives into her system. She fought the chemicals, but her wounded body betrayed her. "Why preserve me?" Nathan secured the portable stretcher beneath her. "Because killing is easy. Understanding is hard." He paused, meeting her gaze directly. "And because every sentient being deserves a chance to be more than what they were programmed to be." As unconsciousness claimed her, Valix experienced something foreign, confusion. The human's actions defied all operational logic. Her training had never prepared her for an enemy who chose mercy over victory. She awoke in a sterile chamber, surgical drones hovering nearby, the wound in her side sealed with regenerative mesh. Through a transparent barrier, she observed Nathan working at a console, his back to her. Vulnerable. Foolish. The perfect target. Yet something stopped her from immediately seeking escape. The human had spared her, healed her, actions incomprehensible within the framework of her existence. Was this a sophisticated interrogation technique? A psychological weapon? When Nathan turned and saw her conscious, he approached the barrier. "How do you feel?" Another incomprehensible question. Valix did not feel. She functioned. Performed. Achieved objectives. My operational capacity is at approximately 63%, she answered mechanically. That's not what I asked, Nathan replied with a slight smile. But it's a start. You have a name? Valix hesitated. Names were tactical vulnerabilities. Yet this human had already preserved her life when doctrine dictated otherwise. I am designated Valix, Infiltration Unit 739. Valix, he repeated, as if testing the sound. Welcome to my home. I suspect we have much to learn from each other. She watched him silently, a strange new sensation forming in her consciousness, something beyond the binary of mission success or failure. Something dangerously close to curiosity. Days passed in Nathan's research station with a rhythm unlike anything Valix had known. In the Valkyrie fleet, existence was measured in mission cycles, training sequences, and combat efficiency scores. Here, time flowed differently, marked by the station's artificial day-night cycles and Nathan's work patterns. The human had moved her from the containment chamber to a sparsely furnished room once her wounds had stabilized. No restraints, no guards, only a simple biometric lock that would alert him if she attempted to leave. It was either profound trust or profound foolishness. You're not eating, Nathan observed one morning, gesturing to the nutrient solution he'd synthesized based on analysis of her biochemistry. Is the formulation incorrect? Valix stared at the purple liquid. Sustenance is not required yet. I can function for 3 more cycles without replenishment. Nathan sighed, setting down his own meal, something he called scrambled eggs, though it bore no resemblance to any egg-bearing species Valix recognized. Functioning isn't living, Valix. Your body needs nutrients to heal properly, not just to function. She tilted her head, the gesture making her cranial ridges catch the light. The distinction is irrelevant. I am a weapon, not a being that lives. Is that what they told you? Nathan's eyes narrowed. The same people who abandoned you on the battlefield? Valix felt an unfamiliar sensation in her thoracic cavity, a tightness. Protocol dictates. I know what your protocol dictates, Nathan interrupted. I've been studying the data crystals recovered from Valkyrie skirmishers. Your commanders sacrificed their soldiers without hesitation. Is that what you were bred for? To die on command? Valix rose abruptly, her height towering over Nathan's human frame. You understand nothing of loyalty to purpose. The Sovereign created us to cleanse the galaxy of human contamination. Individual survival is irrelevant to the greater mission. Nathan didn't flinch at her display. And yet, here you are, alive because of a human's choice. Doesn't that contradict everything you've been taught about us? The question lingered between them, unanswerable within the framework of her training. Valix retreated to her quarters without responding. Later, she found Nathan in what he called his hobby room, a space filled with plants growing under specialized lights. He was carefully tending to a vivid red flower, his movements gentle. Why do you maintain these organisms? She asked from the doorway. They serve no tactical purpose. Nathan smiled without looking up. Not everything needs a tactical purpose, Valix. These are desert roses from Earth. My mother grew them. They remind me of home. Home, she repeated, the concept foreign to her. The Valkyrie had birthing chambers and training facilities, not homes. Don't you have something similar? A place or memory that provides comfort? Valix started to dismiss the question but paused as an unbidden image surfaced, the crystalline training halls where she had once excelled, earning rare acknowledgement from her gene cohort commander. There is a chamber on the flagship where the light refracts through crystal formations, she said slowly. When I completed my final combat trials, I was permitted to meditate there for 1 cycle. The patterns were optimal for neural alignment. Nathan smiled. You liked it. I do not like things, she corrected, but without her usual certainty. In the days that followed, Nathan shared his research with her, ecological studies of the moon's recovering biosphere after decades of industrial mining. He worked to counteract toxic residue, encouraging native organisms to reclaim the landscape. It was, to Valix, an inexplicable expenditure of resources. Why restore what has been destroyed? She asked as they observed monitoring drones' footage. Tactical advantage would dictate terraforming to human specifications. Because this world existed before us, and it deserves to exist on its own terms, Nathan replied. Not everything is about conquest, Valix. The concept was so alien that she found herself returning to it repeatedly in her thoughts. The sovereign taught that resources existed to be claimed, planets to be conquered, species to be subordinated or eliminated. Preservation for its own sake was inefficient, wasteful. Yet she couldn't deny that watching the indigenous silver-furred creatures return to reclaim their habitat stirred something in her, a sensation not entirely unpleasant. One evening, as a violent storm raged outside, Nathan introduced her to something called music. The sounds emanated from hidden speakers, complex patterns of vibration that served no obvious function. This is Bach, Nathan explained, eyes closed as he listened. Composed over 400 years ago on Earth. Valix listened intently, analyzing the mathematical relationships between the notes. This is a method of encoding battle plans? Tactical instructions? Nathan laughed, the sound still strange to her ears. No, it's art. Created simply to be experienced, to evoke emotion. Emotion is inefficient, she recited, but her inner voice lacked conviction. Is it? Nathan challenged. Your people fight with incredible ferocity. Isn't that emotion? Rage, hatred, these drive your warriors against us, don't they? We fight with precision, not emotion, she insisted. The distinction. A deafening crack interrupted her as lightning struck the station's main communication array. Alarms blared through the facility, and Nathan rushed to the control room with Valix following close behind. The array's down, he muttered, fingers flying across control panels. And the backup power coupling is overloading. He grabbed a toolkit and headed toward the maintenance shaft. I need to manually reset the system before we lose environmental controls. Valix watched him disappear into the narrow tunnel, suddenly aware that his absence created an unexpected sensation, concern. Without fully analyzing her actions, she moved to the computer terminal, using her superior processing speed to stabilize the fluctuating power grid. Her fingers, designed for weapons and killing, now worked to preserve rather than destroy. Perhaps, she thought as she rerouted emergency power, understanding one's enemy was more complex than she had been programmed to believe. The maintenance shaft trembled as another lightning strike hit dangerously close to the station. Valix monitored the systems while Nathan worked deep within the station's infrastructure, his vitals displayed on a small screen beside her. His heart rate had increased, his breathing becoming more rapid, signs of exertion or perhaps what humans called stress. The primary coupling is completely fried, Nathan's voice crackled through the comm system. I'll have to reroute through the secondary grid. Valix studied the station schematics. That pathway passes through the unstable section damaged in last month's meteorite impact. Structural integrity is compromised. No choice, he replied. If we lose environmentals, we freeze before morning. She calculated variables rapidly. The risk exceeds acceptable parameters. A short laugh came through the speaker. Acceptable to whom? Sometimes you have to take risks when lives are at stake. Lives. Plural. He included her in his calculations. This realization sent an unfamiliar surge through Valix's neural pathways. The station lights flickered ominously as Nathan's life signs suddenly spiked. A crash echoed through the comm, followed by silence. Nathan? Valix called, surprising herself with the urgency in her voice. No response came. Without hesitation, she moved to the maintenance shaft entrance. Valkyrie bodies weren't designed for the narrow human passages, but her combat training allowed her to navigate efficiently, following the emergency lighting to Nathan's location. She found him trapped beneath a fallen support beam, unconscious, blood seeping from a gash on his forehead. The beam had him pinned at the chest, each breath a visible struggle. Environmental warnings flashed on nearby panels as oxygen levels began to drop. In that moment, Valix experienced a sensation entirely foreign to her training, fear. Not for herself, but for Nathan. The feeling surged through her system like an electrical current, overwhelming her programmed responses. With strength born of her engineered physiology, she lifted the beam. Metal groaned under her grip as she carefully extracted Nathan's body, cradling him in arms designed for killing, not saving. His skin felt alarmingly cool against hers. She navigated the tunnels with her precious cargo, emerging into the control room where medical supplies were stored. With precision that belied her inexperience, she administered emergency treatment, her 4 eyes never leaving his face as she worked. "Why do I care if you survive?" she whispered, applying regenerative gel to his wound. "You are the enemy. Your death would be tactically advantageous." Yet the thought of Nathan's absence created a hollow sensation in her core that defied all rational analysis. Hours passed as the storm raged outside and Valix maintained vigil. She repaired the critical systems herself, following the station schematics and Nathan's meticulous notes. When the environmental controls stabilized and warmth returned to the station, she remained by his side, monitoring his breathing, his heartbeat, the fragile rhythms of human life. Nathan awoke the next morning, wincing as consciousness brought pain. His eyes widened finding Valix beside him. "You saved me," he stated simply. "Yes." She couldn't explain further, the complexity of her actions beyond her vocabulary. "Why?" His gaze held hers, searching. "I do not know." The admission felt like failure. It was not logical. Emotions rarely are. Nathan attempted to sit up, grimacing. Valix supported him with a gentleness that surprised them both. "That's what you felt, Valix." "Emotion. Impossible. I was engineered without such weaknesses." "Is that what they are? Weaknesses?" Nathan's eyes held a challenge. "What you did required more strength than any battle. You chose compassion over conditioning." Valix withdrew her hand from his shoulder, suddenly aware of the contact. "I merely preserved a valuable resource." Nathan smiled weakly. "If that's what you need to tell yourself." That night, Valix dreamed for the first time, vivid images of crystal halls and desert roses, of stars seen not through targeting systems but simply as points of light in darkness. She woke confused, her heart racing with sensations she had no names for. She found Nathan in the observation dome, watching the sunrise through the reinforced glass. Without speaking, she sat beside him, their shoulders nearly touching. "The colors are pleasing," she admitted after a long silence. "They are," he agreed softly. "On the flagship, everything is functional. Efficient." She struggled to articulate the contrast. "Nothing exists simply to be beautiful." Nathan turned to her, his expression gentle. "Beauty is everywhere, Valix. Even in places designed to deny it." His hand moved toward hers, hesitated, then bridged the final distance. The touch of his fingers against hers sent cascades of sensation through her body, both alarming and exhilarating. She did not pull away. "I am malfunctioning," she whispered. "No." His fingers intertwined with hers. "For the first time, you're functioning exactly as a living being should." The proximity stirred new sensations, her pulse accelerating, breath becoming shallow. When Nathan's free hand tentatively touched her face, tracing the contours of her alien features with fascination rather than fear, Valix leaned into the contact. The gesture was instinctive, unplanned, a surrender to something more powerful than her programming. "I do not understand this," she confessed. "Understanding comes later," Nathan replied, his voice low. "Feeling comes first." When his lips met hers, so alien in form yet somehow perfectly fitted, Valix experienced a cascade of sensations that transcended species barriers. The kiss was brief, exploratory, but it shifted something fundamental within her consciousness. As they drew apart, Valix observed Nathan with new awareness. This human had done what countless battles could not. He had transformed her from within, awakening aspects of herself buried beneath layers of conditioning. "What happens now?" she asked, the future suddenly in uncharted territory. Nathan smiled. "We discover who you really are, beyond what they created you to be." That night, as they lay together talking until dawn, sharing stories and silence in equal measure, Valix realized that the warmth spreading through her chest had a name she had been taught to despise: humanity. It was not, as she had been trained to believe, a weakness. In Nathan's arms, experiencing the first tender intimacies between two beings from worlds at war, she discovered it might be the greatest strength of all. 3 months passed like a dream, or what Valix imagined dreams must be, now that she experienced them regularly. Life with Nathan had developed a comfortable rhythm, their days filled with research, conversation, and increasingly intimate moments that defied everything she had been taught about humans. Nathan had shown remarkable patience as she discovered her own capacity for pleasure and connection. Their physical relationship evolved gradually, each new touch an exploration of trust as much as desire. Valix marveled at how their anatomical differences became points of fascination rather than obstacles. In Nathan's arms, she wasn't a weapon but a woman discovering the language of intimacy for the first time. This morning, they lay tangled in sheets, Valix tracing the contours of Nathan's chest with slender fingers that once had known only combat. "You're quiet today," Nathan observed, brushing back a strand of her iridescent hair. "I had another dream," she admitted. "About the Sovereign Fleet. They were searching for something." Nathan propped himself up on one elbow. "For you? Perhaps." She rose from the bed, moving to the window that overlooked the recovering landscape. "I have been absent from duty for 97 standard cycles. Protocol dictates that missing elite units must be recovered or confirmed destroyed." "You think they'll come looking?" It wasn't a question. Nathan understood the implications as well as she did. The station's communication array had been repaired weeks ago, its signals potentially detectable despite their attempts to minimize the signature. The Valkyrie do not abandon resources, especially not. She hesitated. Especially not ones like me. Nathan joined her at the window, his hand finding hers. "What exactly are you, Valix? You've never fully explained." She was silent for a long moment, weighing truths she had never shared. "I am the result of 3 centuries of genetic engineering. My lineage was cultivated from the most successful warrior templates, enhanced with neural modifications designed to eliminate emotional response." A bitter smile crossed her features. "Evidently not as successful as they believed. And your purpose? Infiltration. Assassination. I was created to target human command structures." She turned to face him fully. "I have killed 17 high-ranking officers in the Earth Defense Force. I was en route to my 18th when your outpost's defense systems damaged my craft." Nathan absorbed this information without visible reaction. "And now? Now I am." She searched for the word, compromised. "By you. By this." She gestured between them. "By emotions I was never supposed to possess." The station's alert system interrupted them, a proximity warning that sent them both rushing to the control room. On the monitors, a small craft entered the moon's atmosphere, its configuration instantly recognizable to Valix. "Valkyrie scout vessel," she confirmed, her voice tight. Advanced reconnaissance. More will follow. Nathan's face paled. How much time do we have? Hours, perhaps. She began accessing the station's defense systems, fingers flying across the controls. You should prepare for evacuation. We should prepare, he corrected. I'm not leaving without you. Valix paused, searching his face. Nathan, they will not stop until they recover me. I am too valuable an asset. You're not an asset, he said fiercely. You're a person. Not to them. She returned to the defensive preparations. And not to your people either. If Earth forces found me here, they would execute me as a war criminal. Nathan fell silent, understanding the impossible situation. Neither of their species would accept what had developed between them. To both sides, their relationship was an aberration, a betrayal. They worked frantically, gathering essential supplies and preparing Nathan's emergency shuttle. As they moved equipment, their hands occasionally brushed, each touch a reminder of what they stood to lose. There's a neutral trading post in the Proxima system, Nathan suggested as they loaded medical supplies. We could disappear there, start over. The hope in his voice made something ache in Valix's chest. The Valkyrie have extensive tracking capabilities. As long as I'm alive, they will hunt me. Then we'll keep running. She stopped him, hands on his shoulders. For how long? A year? 10? You would live as a fugitive, abandoned by your own kind? If necessary. His determination shook her. Valix, what we've found, it's worth fighting for. Before she could respond, the station's proximity alarms blared again. This time, the monitor showed a larger vessel entering orbit. Command cruiser, Valix whispered, recognizing the distinctive silhouette. They've sent Derek. Who? My former commander. Valix's expression hardened. And my Gene brother. Within the hour, the cruiser had landed 2 kilometers from the station. Tactical training told Valix they would approach on foot to minimize detection. She and Nathan retreated to the station's central hub, sealing blast doors behind them. I should face them alone, Valix insisted, checking the makeshift weapon she had assembled. You have no part in this conflict. Nathan loaded his research station's defensive rifle, a tool originally designed for clearing dangerous fauna. I became part of this conflict the moment I decided not to let you die. The security monitors showed 6 figures approaching through the toxic landscape, their armor designed to blend with the environment. At their center walked a tall figure whose bearing marked him as the leader. Derek, Valix confirmed, her voice barely audible. They watched as the Valkyrie efficiently bypassed the station's outer security measures. Soon, the sound of metal being cut echoed through the corridors. Nathan took Valix's hand, pressing something into her palm, a small data crystal. Whatever happens, take this. It contains everything I've learned about regenerating damaged ecosystems. It could help worlds ravaged by this war. Before she could respond, the inner door to their sanctuary slid open. 6 Valkyrie warriors entered, weapons trained on Nathan. Behind them stood Derek, his height exceeding even Valix's, his 4 eyes scanning the room until they found her. Unit 739, he said, his voice devoid of emotion. You have violated protocol. Explain. Valix straightened, instinctively falling into the formal stance of her training. Commander Derek. I was injured and captured. The human preserved my life. Derek's gaze shifted to Nathan, assessing him with cold precision. For interrogation purposes, no doubt. Has sensitive information been compromised? No, Valix answered quickly. He sought to understand our biology, nothing more. Curious. Derek approached Nathan, circling him. This human had you at his mercy for months, yet you appear, enhanced rather than diminished. He turned back to Valix. The Sovereign will be most interested in your debriefing. Nathan stepped forward. She's not going anywhere. The Valkyrie warriors tensed, weapons humming with energy. Derek merely tilted his head. You claim ownership of Valkyrie property, human? She isn't property, Nathan replied, his voice steady despite the danger. She's a living being with the right to choose her own path. A sound like grinding metal emerged from Derek, the Valkyrie equivalent of laughter. Units do not choose. They serve. He gestured to his warriors. Secure the human for examination. The Sovereign will want to understand how he has affected Unit 7-39's programming. As the warriors moved toward Nathan, Valix made her decision. She stepped between them, her stance protective. Stand aside, 739, Derek ordered. My name, she said clearly, is Valix. Derek's eyes narrowed. Names are for autonomous beings. You are a weapon. No longer. She raised her chin. I will not return to the fleet. A dangerous silence filled the room. Derek studied her, his expression unreadable. You have been corrupted by prolonged exposure to the enemy. I have been awakened, Valix countered. There are truths the Sovereign has hidden from us, Derek. About our capacity for choice. For feeling. Feeling? Derek spat the word. That is your malfunction talking. You require reconditioning. Nathan stood his ground beside Valix. She's made her choice. Honor it. Derek's hand moved to his sidearm. Choice is irrelevant. The mission is all. In the tense standoff, with weapons aimed and loyalties tested, Valix realized that her greatest battle would not be fought with physical strength, but with the very emotions she had only just discovered how to feel. The command room crackled with tension as Valix faced her former commander. Behind her stood Nathan, unarmed yet somehow the most dangerous presence in the room, dangerous because of what he represented. Choice. Freedom. Emotion. The Sovereign anticipated potential corruption, Derek said coldly. Your neural pathways were installed with failsafes. He removed a small device from his utility belt. This will reset your programming. The aberrant behavioral patterns will be purged. Valix's body tensed involuntarily. She knew what the device would do, strip away everything she had become, leaving only the weapon behind. Everything she had discovered with Nathan would vanish like stardust. There is nothing aberrant about growth, she replied, measuring the distance to Derek, calculating odds with the precision she had been engineered for. What if our purpose isn't destruction, Derek? What if we were meant for more? Something flickered in Derek's eyes, doubt, perhaps, or recognition. After all, they shared the same genetic template, the same base programming. We are Valkyrie, he stated, though his voice held less certainty. We serve the Sovereign's vision. A vision of endless war, Nathan interjected. Is that truly the height of your potential? To kill until nothing remains? Derek's attention snapped to Nathan, his posture shifting subtly. Humans destroyed our colony worlds first. Your kind initiated this conflict. That was generations ago, Nathan replied. How many more must die before the debt is paid? The other warriors exchanged glances, their perfect discipline wavering at this unexpected debate. Valix saw her opportunity in their momentary confusion. She moved with blinding speed, disarming the two nearest warriors before they could react. Chaos erupted. Energy weapons discharged, scorching the walls as Valix pulled Nathan behind a reinforced console. Derek barked orders, his forces regrouping with mechanical efficiency. The emergency shuttle, Valix whispered urgently. We need to reach it. Nathan nodded, eyes fixed on the corridor leading to the landing bay. There's a maintenance passage. It'll be tight for you, but... A blast cut through the air inches from their position. Valix returned fire with the captured weapon, her aim precise despite the chaos. Valix! Derek's voice boomed through the room. This resistance is illogical. Submit to reconditioning and the human will be examined rather than terminated. He speaks of me as if I'm not here, Nathan muttered with grim humor. Not a great negotiation tactic. Despite everything, Valix felt a surge of something warm, affection, she now recognized. Even facing death, Nathan remained uniquely himself. I need to create a diversion, she decided. Get to the shuttle. Prepare for launch. Nathan gripped her arm. We go together or not at all. Their eyes met, a silent communication that transcended species. In that moment, Valix understood what humans called love, not as an abstract concept, but as a tangible force binding them together. Trust me, she whispered, and sealed the promise with a kiss that burned with urgency and tenderness. Before he could object further, she launched herself into the open, firing with precision at the environmental controls. Warning klaxons blared as oxygen levels began to drop, a calculated risk. The Valkyrie could withstand low oxygen longer than humans, but the chaos would cover Nathan's escape. Shuttle Bay, she called to Nathan. Go! As Nathan reluctantly retreated toward the maintenance passage, Derek confronted Valix directly, his weapon trained on her center mass. You would die for this human? Disbelief colored his tone. Valix straightened to her full height. I would live for him. There's a difference you haven't been programmed to understand. For a fleeting moment, something like recognition crossed Derek's features. The human has altered you fundamentally. He showed me what I already was, she corrected. What we all could be, if given the chance. Derek's finger tensed on the trigger. The Sovereign has lied to us, Valix finished. We were not created as weapons, Derek. We were a peaceful species once, before the genetic modifications, before the neural conditioning. I've seen the historical records in Nathan's database. Uncertainty flickered across Derek's face, the first emotion she had ever witnessed in him. The same awakening she had experienced months ago was beginning within him, a hairline fracture in perfect conditioning. The hesitation was all she needed. Valix disarmed him with a precisely calculated strike, though she deliberately avoided causing serious injury. The other warriors converged, but their movements seemed sluggish, their perfect coordination disrupted by the conflicting commands and dropping oxygen. Valix fought her way through them, using their training patterns against them. She knew every move before they made it, she had been programmed with the same combat algorithms. The difference was that she now fought with passion as well as precision. Reaching the maintenance passage, she sealed the door behind her, buying precious minutes. The narrow tunnel forced her to contort her body as she followed Nathan's trail. Ahead, she heard the shuttle's engines beginning their startup sequence. She emerged into the bay just as Nathan finished the pre-launch checks. His face registered relief when he saw her, then alarm at the blood, cobalt blue, seeping from a wound in her shoulder. You're hurt, he said, helping her aboard. Superficial damage, she assured him, sealing the shuttle door as the first sounds of pursuit reached them. The craft lifted off as Valkyrie warriors breached the bay, their weapons fired glancing off the reinforced hull. Through the viewport, Valix watched as Derek emerged, his eyes tracking their escape. For an instant, their gazes locked across the increasing distance. She raised her hand in a gesture of farewell, or perhaps invitation. Nathan plotted a course away from both Earth-controlled and sovereign space. The neutral colony on Proxima IV should be reachable with our fuel reserves, he said. It's a trading outpost, mixed species. We might find acceptance there. As the shuttle breached the atmosphere, Valix felt the weight of her former existence falling away. The vast darkness of space no longer seemed like a battlefield but a canvas of possibilities. 6 weeks later, they approached the sprawling settlement on Proxima IV, a patchwork of architectural styles reflecting dozens of species coexisting in fragile harmony. Their reception was cautious but not hostile. The colony had been built by refugees and outcasts from various conflicts. They secured modest quarters in the alien district, where Valix's distinctive appearance drew fewer stares. Nathan found work in the environmental engineering section, his expertise in biosphere restoration valuable on a world struggling to balance population growth with sustainability. For Valix, integration proved more challenging. Her combat skills had limited application in civilian life, and suspicion of the Valkyrie ran deep even in neutral territory. Yet she persisted, volunteering as a security consultant for merchant vessels navigating disputed territories. Her intimate knowledge of both human and sovereign patrol patterns made her services increasingly sought after. Their home became a quiet sanctuary from the complexity of their public lives. There, they continued to explore the depth of connection between them, their physical intimacy evolving into something that transcended the boundaries of their respective biologies. What had begun as curiosity became a language uniquely their own, a bridge between worlds that politics had declared irreconcilable. 3 months into their new life, Valix returned from a consulting assignment to find Nathan examining an encrypted transmission. It came through the refugee network, he explained, expression guarded. It's addressed to you, using your full designation. Valix tensed. Only the Valkyrie used that identification sequence. Can you trace it? No need. Nathan activated the message. He included his location. Derek's face appeared on the screen, his features haggard but his eyes clearer than Valix remembered. Unit 739, Valix, he began formally. I bring information vital to your continued survival. After your departure, I submitted an anomalous report indicating your destruction during combat. The Sovereign accepted this account without question. Valix exchanged a surprised glance with Nathan. Additionally, Derek continued, I have identified 7 other units displaying signs of the same awakening you experienced. I have removed them from active duty for specialized training. We seek guidance on proceeding with this evolution. The message ended with coordinates for a secure communication channel. Silence filled their small dwelling as the implications settled between them. Nathan was the first to speak. It's spreading, he said softly. What happened to you is happening to others. Valix nodded, a complex mixture of emotions coursing through her. The conditioning was never as absolute as the Sovereign believed. What will you do? She considered the question carefully. Contact them. Share what I've learned. Perhaps. She hesitated, the concept still new. Perhaps guide them. Nathan took her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers in the way that still sent ripples of sensation through her body. You could be the beginning of something extraordinary, Valix. A bridge between our kinds. That night, as they lay together beneath the unfamiliar stars of their new home, Valix reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had been designed as the perfect weapon, precise, lethal, and emotionless. Yet the strongest parts of her now were precisely those the Sovereign had tried to engineer away, her capacity for compassion, for adaptation, for love. In Nathan's arms, she whispered the truth she had discovered. Perhaps this is our true purpose, not to destroy each other, but to discover what we might become together. His lips found hers in the darkness, and as their bodies joined in the intimate dance they had perfected together, Valix embraced the beautiful irony of her existence. Created to bring death, she had instead discovered how to truly live, and perhaps, in time, to bring that same awakening to others. The weapon had not merely learned to feel. She had learned to hope.